Okay, Gary Store fans, we're in the Grand Central Terminal. Look at this marble. This is marble that Cornelius Vanderbilt, who we've seen in other parts of this video as statues, imported from both Italy and Turkey. Here are the famous lights. Each one of those lights has 100 individual light bulbs. They can be lowered for replacement, which they do frequently. As you can notice, none of them are out. They also are filled with acorn designs. Cornelius Vanderbilt and his family were descendants of his great-grandfather who worked as an indentured servant. An indentured servant is someone who signs a contract to work for someone else in exchange for free passage to the United States or to the colonies. But it's basically, you're working then for that person as an indentured servant. They don't have to pay you money, and you're basically little better than a slave. The acorn is the Vanderbilt symbol because from his great-grandfather, who was the indentured servant, he grew into an oak tree. That's why the family symbol is an acorn, based on the statement that from an acorn a great oak tree grows. And they became a very great oak tree. The extra expense involved in putting up marble on all the walls is astronomical. Today, it would be impossible to spend this kind of money, although they did do it and replicate it in the Long Island Railroad portion of Grand Central Terminal. This is the famous Oyster Bar restaurant. We're not going to dine there today, but this is where Jackie Kennedy Onassis came in 1985 to try to save the Grand Central Terminal from being torn down. At one point in time in the early 70s, there was a thought they'd take the terminal and convert it to a 3-story bowling alley. That's because after the high point in the career of the terminal, it fell in popularity due to mostly people traveling via airplane for even short distances or driving their cars. President Eisenhower, when he took office in 1952, immediately instituted the interstate highway system with the assistance of Congress. He pushed for it, and because he was General Eisenhower, they did it. His rationale, by the way, for doing the interstate highway system was that in the event of a nuclear war, say, for example, Miami was hit with a nuclear weapon, the people of Miami would want to leave quickly and with 2-lane roads, you wouldn't be able to accomplish it. So he did it. His theory was that by having a series of high-speed, limited access highways, people would be able to move quickly around the cities. And he also considered, as a general, in the event that we were invaded, he would be able to move troops on those same interstate highways. So the interstate highways system was created both for defense, mostly for defense. That was how he sold it to Congress. And now it's relied on. But it killed the railroads because people weren't using the railroads to travel anymore. It was more, for really short trips, they just take their car and drive on the interstate. For longer trips, they would take the airplanes. Now this is another view. We're spying on the happy people in here in the Oyster Bar from outside, dining. and probably eating oysters. We have another video coming up that will just cover the food that's served here. The oyster bar I mentioned because it's of historical significance. Now, do you see how the designers of this place constructed it? That's a ramp going up. You notice there's no stairs? It goes up about 10, 15 feet, no stairs. You notice this has another ramp going down to the lower level where there's another food court. The architects of this building correctly determined, being way ahead of their time, that ramps were a more effective way to move people faster, because people can walk up a ramp faster than they can walk upstairs. As you may know, that in the 1946, approximately 750,000 commuters a day used the Grand Central. Today, it's down to about 250,000 for Metro North, 250,000 for the Long Island Railroad, and another 500,000 who are just tourists, the people walking through from one building to another. But this place gets about 1 million visitors a day. It also connects with the subways, the Long Island Railroad, and the Metro North. Here's Zaro's cold beverages, cookies, biscuits, food and snacks. Here we have a rear view of the electric vehicles that are used by the MTA Fire Department. They have their own fire department here to help people if they have a heart attack on the train or in the terminal itself. And they can get, with these small electric vehicles here, much faster than New York City ambulance can get here. Also, the Grand Central Terminal has its own fire department. These gentlemen are part of that fire department, and they would fight fires here. Because if the regular New York City Fire Department came, they would have to run fire hoses probably several hundred yards to get to where the fire was. With these little fire trucks, they can tap in to fire hydrants that are located conveniently all over this facility. Now we're in the main Grand Central Station pop-up. If you look around, you can see enormous size of the station.
Yeah, but I don't know where to go with
that. You look over at those 3 large windows at the end of the station, you will see a familiar sign below them, an Apple sign. And below that, the 3 windows are the Apple store, which is located on that walkway. We may go visit it later. In another part of this video, it's the second video we'll be doing just on the shopping and dining experiences here. But in this video, we're covering more significant things. Now we see more things related just to the station mechanics itself. And once again, you see the interesting lights. And if you look up here on either side of these large windows, they all relate to walkways. And the walkways are connected to offices. And that's where all the personnel who run the station are located. That's where they have their offices. This is where you can buy tickets for Metro North. Now, this is the world famous clock. This is the clock in the center of Grand Central. Estimated worth of that clock is $20 million because the backdrop of the clock is made of actually opal material to give it the color that it has. Also, an interesting thing you might enjoy learning about this ticket station. This is the information center. It's manned 24 hours a day. And the people giving the information here have a secret stairway that goes directly below the floor. And they can take that stairway and go down to a locker room where they keep their personal belongings. They give information for all the trainings.
I wish. I'm 63 right now.
Now, this is a door. This little booth never had a door, but after 9/11, so they can make a faster exit and not have to go back into the innards of the station in the event of a bomb threat or something of that nature, they were made to add a door to this facility. Never had one before that.
They know very quickly, like movies.
Now, this is the elevator that will take you to the MetLife building. Another interesting story about the MetLife building is, which we will have other photographs of when we go to do the exterior of this building, is that the MetLife building, which replaced the Pan Am building, in 1963, the Pan Am building was built essentially on top of and just behind Grand Central Station. In the air rights above it. And what they did with the MetLife building, because elevators require, high-speed elevators require about another 50 or 60 feet below the ground level floor, which they couldn't do here because they'd be into train tracks. So in the Pan Am building, what they did was they raised the lobby of the Pan Am building up to the third floor. So you take escalators to go up to the third floor, and then you get an elevator. And by doing that, the high-speed elevators can go down into the depth that they have to operate correctly. The floor footprint in the Pan Am building, or now the MetLife building, is 55,000 square feet per floor. It is still one of the largest office buildings in New York City. And with a floor imprint of that size, if all the people want to leave at the same time, around 5 o'clock, or come in at the same time, around 9 o'clock, you need a really high-powered elevator system to do it. They have that in the MetLife building. Another interesting factor is when Pan Am decided to build a building, their headquarters, on top of Grand Central Station, they were really telling Cornelius Vanderbilt's descendants we're on top now. Literally and figuratively, we're on top because air power has taken over from train power. At some point in time, we may look back on historically and determine that possibly we should have put more of our efforts into building high-speed commuter rail around the country rather than an interstate highway system. Another interesting factor that you might enjoy hearing about is the roof. Let's take a look at the roof of this building. It's a 25,000 square foot replica of the October sky taken from a drawing that was made actually in the 1600s by an Italian artist. My uncle, whose name was actually not an uncle, he was the father-in-law of my uncle. I guess that would make him a great uncle, maybe. Was hired as one of the painters by the Italian artists that they contracted with to paint the stars and constellations on this night sky. Originally, they were thinking about having a glass windows, skylights, but decided it would snow and rain and the possibility of leaking. It would be better to have a solid roof. Also, when you look at this spot, you will see at some point there is a dent in the roof. They have left the dent there because they want people to remember. And the dent, I believe, is right there. They put up on display a rocket ship from NASA in the 50s. And when they erected it, they used ropes and things of that nature, and they accidentally pulled it too tight, too quickly, and it dented the ceiling, which was never repaired. That ceiling, by the way, until back in 1985, was completely black. They blamed it on cigarette smokers, but in reality, it was black because of exhaust from cars that seeped in. Because remember, this building was built before air conditioning. So prior to installing air conditioning, which of course they have now, they allowed fresh air to come in, and that air wasn't as fresh as one would think. Zoom in and take a look at some of the constellations. They've even outlined the constellations for us to look at them. Which makes it easier, I suppose. By the way, one of the fun facts I left out and didn't mention to you is the map or design that they got from the artist, they laid on the floor. And they transposed it directly from the way it was laid on the floor. But by doing that, in reality, they put it on in reverse. So this is the opposite of the way it's supposed to look. So my uncle's father-in-law was one of the painters who painted this ceiling, which eventually turned black with smoke. Road terminal has a lot of tracks. Here you can see some of the tracks. This has more platforms than any railroad in the world. There's the tracks. Now, as you know, I always try to give you folks as much guidance as I can. You see that there's two rails, and there's a rail painted red. That rail that's painted red is what's called the third rail. There's 700 volts DC in that rail. That's what is enough power in it to power all the engines of any number of trains. Besides the voltage, the amperage is into the thousands of amps. People who accidentally touch it or fall against it literally get cooked quickly and literally turn black and charred. So, in the event, and there's been talk lately of people being pushed or thrown into off subway rails. See the yellow markings on that platform? Don't stand on the yellow. Stand back in the yellow. I always stand further back by one of the posts so that I can grab a post if someone tries to grab me and throw me in front of the train. Now, in the unlikely event you fall into the track, what you should do is don't go toward the third rail, which is the furthest thing from the platform, but go under the platform itself. If you look, see when we zoom in a little bit, there's more than enough space under the platform for you to stand up against the platform even when a train is coming, or lie down on the ground by the platform. That would be the best way to save your life if that happened. You cannot lie on the track and wait and hope the train going over you isn't going to hurt you. If you lie on the track, it will kill you. Of the interior of the Grand Central Terminal. I just wanted to tell you some things about the terminal that you may not be aware of. But I hear some music playing. I'm going to stop for a moment because it may be copyrighted music and YouTube doesn't permit that. This is the Apple Store, and this is a selection of Apple phones and Apple experts to help you with your sale or purchase of the phone. Big customer here, it appears. This is where you can wait for a service people to help you with your iPhone problems. No, just look around. It's the genius bar, because all those men are genius. Ready to help you. I have to say, there's lots of folks here to help you with any iPhone problems that you may have.
Is it possible?
Here's another view of the terminal. I wanted to tell you this. There were originally 3 terminals here. First terminal was in 1863, and it was called the Grand Central depot. The depot was open air. All the trains were burning coal and steam fired and smoke. And this part of Manhattan at that time was underpopulated. There weren't that many people here, like now. And they built a depot where the trains would come in and they could be unloaded and people would get off the trains. At that point in time, back in 1863, Westchester County had not yet been developed to the extent that it is now. Westchester was the booniest in those days, woods. So was the area where the depot was built. People thought that Cornelius Vanderbilt, who built the depot in 1863, was crazy. Why would he build a depot where no people live? All the people live downtown. How are they going to get to your train station? Well, the use of the train station grew. More and more development occurred in Westchester. More and more people wanted to use the trains to go to New Haven and the Harlem line and the Hudson line. And when that happened, it was overwhelmed. The depot had more customers than they could handle. The depot was modeled after a French or English all-glass enclosure. It was open on both sides. Trains would pull in, and the riders were protected by the fact there was a big glass overhead, similar to what they have in London and Paris. In Paris, in two locations, two train stations. So, after that, they rebuilt it, and in 1893, started construction on the Grand Central Station. That was smaller than what we're in now, and very little remains of that station. And it didn't work out effectively. Within 10 years, it was overwhelmed, and they started work on the Grand Central Terminal, which is the current building that we're in. The Grand Central Terminal, when it was built and opened in 1913, construction was started in 1904. It was designed to handle up to 1 million passengers a day. Currently, that's just about what it's handling. Besides, not just passengers, probably 500,000 passengers and about 500,000 people just coming in to use the facility. This is one of New York City's most famous landmarks with lots of hidden things here. Let's look at some more things to look at. All right. By the way, if you like this type of video, hit that red button you see on the lower right-hand side of your screen and hit subscribe. Thank you. And also give us a like if you could. Bye-bye. All right, Jerry's Tour fans, let's take a look at this directory. Excuse me. The directory says the Campbell Bar. It says the Vanderbilt Tennis Club and Credit Union. Now, what's interesting about that is that's in the basement. The Campbell Bar is a secret bar. It used to be an apartment that a wealthy person named Campbell owned and would come here just to have fun and party at night. And now it's turned into a regular bar. We may go and visit it later. You have to exit the building and then go around and sneak in the front way. And then we have the Vanderbilt Tennis Club. That's on the 4th floor. It's a regular tennis club. It's not hard through. It's some sort of rubbery substance. And it's $200 an hour. And it's open to the public. So you can come in if you'd like and play tennis there. Tour fans, this is the famous whispering spot. See these people standing in the corner foolishly talking to the wall? They're talking to the wall because people on the opposite corners can hear them. This is some tile that was put on the roof by an Italian designer and architect. And because of the distance between the roof and the floor and the curvature of the roof. When you say something in one of these corners, that young lady is talking to this gentleman over here, it goes to the opposite corner, and you can hear them as loudly as if you were standing next to them. People have come here to propose, do all sorts of things, but it's really kind of cool. If I stand here and talk into this corner, people will be able to hear me loud and clear in the opposite corner over there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Wonderful. I hear you loud and clear. I hear you loud and clear. Yes, I hear you loud and clear. It works.
That's amazing.
People come here with their fiance to ask them to marry them. It has to be the opposite. And what happens, I guess, is the sound is transmitted up over this round wall and down to the opposite corner. Very cool, one of the most popular tourist attractions around. Right in front of the Oyster Bar.